The final 24 hours of Carl Panzram. Last words will shock you. Hi everyone. Some criminals beg for mercy. Others fight to the bitter end. But Carl Panzram, he did something few ever dared. He demanded death. Known for a life soaked in violence and hatred. Panzram's final 24 hours were a masterclass in cold defiance. He didn't cry. He didn't pray. He laughed, cursed, and boasted until the very end. This was a man who claimed to have taken 21 lives, burned cities, and attacked over 1,000 people. And when the gallows came calling, he didn't flinch. In fact, he embraced it like an old friend. What unfolds in the final day of Carl Panzram isn't just an execution. It's the unraveling of one of America's most dangerous minds. A chilling descent into the thoughts of a man who swore he'd kill again if given the chance. This is not a redemption story. This is how hatred dies with a snarl, not a whisper. Let's begin. Dear friends, Carl Panzram's final 24 hours were as volatile and unrepentant as the life he had led. It was September 4th, 1930, and inside the cold confines of Leavenworth Penitentiary, the guards watched him closely. His execution was set for the following morning, and while most men would be trembling, Carl Panzram paced his cell with barely contained contempt, as if daring death to come faster. That afternoon, Panzram did something unusual. He handed the guard a small, folded piece of paper. Inside were 2 razor blade shards contraband, smuggled in 2 weeks earlier by none other than Robert Stroud, the Birdman of Alcatraz. Stroud, a fellow inmate and vocal opponent of the death penalty, had passed them to Panzram with instructions. Use them to take your own life before the state can do it for you. But Panzram never used them. Instead, he returned them with a sneer. I'm not going to die like that, he said. Not by his own hand, not quietly. Months earlier, on April 14th, a judge had sentenced Panzram to hang for the murder of prison laundry supervisor Robert Warnke, a civilian worker whom Panzram beat to death with a 4-foot iron bar inside the prison laundry. It was the final crime in a lifetime of carnage. He didn't deny it. In fact, he embraced it. I look forward to dancing at the end of a rope, he told the court, just like some folks do on their wedding night. Carl Panzram's life had been a relentless trail of destruction. By his own account, he'd murdered 21 people, committed thousands of burglaries and arsons, and assaulted over 1,000 young men during his years of lawless drifting across the U.S., South America, and even Europe. He had no remorse. In fact, he despised the world. I hate the whole damn human race, including myself, he wrote in a letter to the president. That night, after returning the blades, Panzram lay on his cot, flipping through magazines, chain smoking and humming strange tunes. He rejected the chaplain's visit. I don't need saving, he said. Instead, he spent the hours reading, reflecting, though not with regret. In fact, he dictated most of his life story to a young guard. Henry Lesser, the only person Panzram ever referred to as a real friend. Through Lesser, Panzram's words would eventually reach the public raw, unapologetic, and horrifying. By 7:15 in the evening, his last meal was served. No special requests, just beans, bread, boiled potatoes, and coffee. Panzram didn't complain. He ate slowly, methodically. Then he resumed pacing. His cell echoed with the refrain of a song he'd written himself crude, strange, and oddly mournful. He sang it softly under his breath, over and over again, through the bars. Guards noted his demeanor. He was calm, too calm. There was no visible fear, no last-minute breakdown. But there was intensity, a coiled rage beneath the surface. And that's what made him terrifying. He wasn't resigned. He was ready. Reporters had arrived at Leavenworth for the execution. 2 of them managed to talk their way into death row for a brief visit. Inside, they found Panzram lounging on his bunk, flipping through pages of a magazine. He barely looked at them. When asked about the upcoming hanging, he smirked. "Don't bother me with that stuff. My part of the performance isn't ready yet, he said. Then, with a bitter grin, he added, I'll prance up those 13 steps like a blooded stallion. The reporters pressed him for a final quote. Yeah, he said dryly. I regret I won't get to finish this magazine story. It's continued next issue. Panzram spent the final hours of the night pacing his cell. Just before dawn, the guards arrived. A quiet knock, a jangle of keys. It was time. Inside the corridor, the executioner and witnesses were already assembled. Among them, reporters, prison officials, and doctors, all required by law to observe what would be the first execution ever carried out at Leavenworth. The warden had arranged for 2 priests to be present, hoping Panzram might find some comfort. But the sight of them enraged him. Are there any Bible-backed hypocrites in here? He bellowed. When the warden tried to calm him, Panzram exploded. Run them off, or you'll have one hell of a time getting me out of this cell. Every man I get my hands on is going to the hospital. The priests were quickly escorted away. With the corridor cleared, Panzram straightened his back and nodded. All right, let's get going. What the hell are we waiting for? At precisely 6 o'clock on September 5th, 1930, Panzram stepped from his cell and into the execution corridor. He wore a pressed prison uniform and a look of fierce defiance. He climbed the gallows steps without hesitation. At the top, with the noose ready, he turned to the crowd and snarled his infamous last words. Hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard. I could kill 10 men while you're fooling around. The hood was pulled over his head. The rope was adjusted. A second later, the trap was sprung. His body fell. The noose snapped taut. And just like that, it was over. At 6:18, Carl Panzram was pronounced dead. His unclaimed body was buried that afternoon in Leavenworth's prison cemetery. Row number 6, grave 24. There was no ceremony, no mourners, only the wind rattling the trees above a nameless grave. And perhaps that's what Panzram wanted all along. No redemption, no forgiveness, just silence. And the end. In the end, Carl Panzram remained consistent to the very last breath, brutal, unapologetic, and utterly devoid of remorse. His death at Leavenworth was not met with sorrow, nor was it marked by redemption. It was the final act in a life defined by rage and destruction. He left behind no legacy of peace, only a chilling manuscript of confessions that continue to disturb and fascinate to this day. Panzram's story forces us to confront unsettling truths about justice, punishment, and the capacity for evil within a single man. He refused last rites, scorned mercy, and spat defiance in the face of death. But beneath the violent bravado was a man shaped by a world that failed him at every turn, and whom he, in turn, never spared. As the gallows doors closed, so did one of the darkest chapters in American criminal history. But the echoes of his life still provoke one question. Can true evil ever be reformed?